There have been many celebrities who've run for public office, from bodybuilder Arnold Schwarzenegger to actors Clint Eastwood and Ronald Reagan to TV celebrity Dr. Oz, who, at the time we're filming this episode of the podcast, is running for Senate in Pennsylvania. Today we have the story of a beloved music star from Appalachia who once tossed his hat in the ring in the state of Tennessee. Hello, folks. I'm Steve Gilley, along with Rod Mullins, and this is Stories, a History of Appalachia. Now, before we get started, if you haven't already, be sure to go down below, click that subscribe button, ding the bell for updates, and if you don't mind, give us a thumbs up too, okay?
You know, Steve, I know you mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger, Clint Eastwood, Ronald Reagan, but we also left out a couple of more celebrities in there, too. Jesse the Body Ventura.
Mm-hmm.
He was a governor, I think, of, Minnesota?
I believe so, yes.
And Kane, who is the Knox County mayor in Tennessee.
Yes. And I'm sure there's a whole lot more besides those as well.
Right. There are, but, you know, that's just a couple that came to my mind because, yeah, sometimes these celebrities, they like to kind of get together and get into politics, and, well, we kind of know where that goes.
Yeah, we do. Well, the fellow we're talking about today is Roy Claxton Acuff. Yeah, that's right. Roy Acuff, who was born in Maynardville, Tennessee on September 15th, 1903, to Baptist preacher Simon Acuff and his wife Ida. Now, Roy's father was a traditional-style fiddler, very accomplished, and his mother played the piano. So Roy himself, born into a musical family, learned to play harmonica as a young boy. The family moved to Fountain City, now part of Knoxville, in 1919, where he attended Central High School, sang in the school choir, and played baseball. And he was so good at that sport that he was offered a scholarship at Carson Newman when he graduated, but he turned it down to play ball in several baseball clubs around Knoxville, working at odd jobs and taking part in a boxing match or two.
I can't imagine that. Roy Acuff boxing, little bitty stick arms. Whoa. He must be pretty good.
Dynamite comes in small packages, Rod.
That's true. But, you know, I can't picture him doing this. But, you know, he did try out for the minor league Knoxville Smokies in the year 1929, but he suffered a sunstroke, which led to a series of collapses during spring training, and he gave up on his baseball career and his dream of playing in the major leagues. The sunstroke had even led Roy to have a nervous breakdown in 1930, and he recalled that he couldn't stand any sunshine at all. What got him through all of this, though, was his music.
It did. He practiced his fiddle, playing on the family's front porch in Fountain City most evenings after that burning sun went down. He listened intently to recordings of such old-time fiddlers as Fiddlin' John Carson that his father had given him, practiced, and eventually made it as what many called a hillbilly musician. He worked his way up the musical ladder, first traveling with a medicine show, snake oil salesman, all that. He also started off as, of all things, a blackface performer, then on to local Knoxville area shows with other Knoxville musicians. He formed a group with two of them, the Tennessee Crackerjacks, which performed on either WROL or WNOX in Knoxville, depending on whichever one Acuff was on the outs with over payment for performing. After changing their name to the Crazy Tennesseans, the group got a recording contract, Rod, on the strength of Acuff's song, The Great Speckled Bird.
Well, in 1938, the Crazy Tennesseans auditioned for a spot on the famous Grand Ol Opry, and they got it on their second try. George Hay, the solemn old judge, as he was called, he was the founder of the Opry, he changed their name yet again to the Smoky Mountain Boys, and they soon became one of the Opry's most popular acts. Then in 1940, Roy Acuff and his Smoky Mountain Boys went to Hollywood. George Hay took them there to appear in the motion picture Grand Ol Opry. Roy apparently impressed Hollywood while he was there because he soon appeared in several, B movies, including Oh My Darling Clementine, Night Train to Memphis, and Home in San Antone, all filmed over the next decade.
He also co-founded what's now one of the most powerful music publishing companies in America, Acuff Rose Music, which has the rights to some of country's most popular songs. Roy Acuff was a man on the way up, and the sky was the limit. And it was during this time that he saw yet another opportunity. In 1943, the Grand Ol Opry was set to go nationwide with Prince Albert Tobacco as its sponsor. Roy Acuff had invited the governor of Tennessee, Prentice Cooper, to be the guest of honor at the event, which would spotlight Tennessee for the rest of the nation. Governor Cooper, though, was not amused. In fact, he had absolutely no use for the invitation. He publicly criticized Acuff for playing that disgraceful noise he called music, and went on to say that the Smoky Mountain Boys and Roy Acuff made Tennessee a laughingstock as the, quote, hillbilly capital of the United States. That's his words, folks, not ours.
Roy Acuff found out about the governor's diss of his invitation when a newspaper reporter told him what Cooper had said. The newsman then suggested that maybe Acuff should run for governor himself. At first, Roy Acuff kind of scoffed at the idea, but not for long. He actually made a protest run for the Republican nomination for governor in 1944, but it went nowhere, and Roy Acuff went back to singing and acting, but only for 4 years. By 1948, Cooper was no longer governor, but the seed placed in Acuff's mind by that newspaperman 5 years before had really turned into an itch, one that Mr. Acuff just, well, he had to scratch it.
He did, and he actually had a bit of an advantage in a way. You see, Roy Acuff's grandfather, Coram Acuff, had been a Tennessee state senator from Union County, meaning politics were in his family DNA, just like music had been. In the late 1940s, Democrats controlled Tennessee, just as they did that year across the South. Unlike the rest of the South, though, the Republican Party was strong in East Tennessee and had been back to the Civil War when that part of the state was firmly against secession. The Democrats had former Governor Gordon Browning running against incumbent Governor Jim Nance McCord for the nomination. While McCord had the support of the Tennessee political machine under E.H. Boss Crump of Memphis, he'd become quite unpopular when he convinced the Democratic legislature to pass a state sales tax, as you can imagine. Browning, a political brawler, even attacked Crump himself, demanding to know if he would support the winner of the primary. In the end, Browning beat McCord by 13 points.
Well, at a stop in Knoxville to stump for GOP candidates in Knox County in late June, Roy Acuff announced that he was giving serious thought to seeking the nomination once again. He entered the primary. Acuff's platform was, according to him, centered on the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule. He said if it didn't work in Nashville, then he didn't want to be governor. Well, this time, he won the right to represent the Republican Party in the governor's race against Gordon Browning in 1948. Also running as the Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate was B. Carroll Reese, former and future 1st District Congressman from Johnson City, Tennessee, against Democrat, I love this name, Estes Kefauver. Now, if you're interested, the B in Carroll Reese's name stands for Brasilia, an ancestor for whom he was named.
That is an interesting name. I don't know why he didn't just go with that, you know?
I don't know either. That would have definitely caught a lot of people's attention.
Anyway, Roy Acuff's popularity was not enough to get him into the governor's mansion. Despite his best efforts, when the voters went to the polls, they made sure to vote for the man with the D next to his name, and that man was Gordon Browning. Browning won the election of 1948 66% to 33%. Congressman Reese likewise lost to Democrat Kefauver. And you'd imagine that, well, Roy would be a bit disappointed, but you'd be wrong. He was actually relieved. Like the dog that almost caught the car but didn't, he didn't have to figure out what to do with the governor's office. As he said after his loss,
I'm proud I wasn't elected because my life in the entertainment world has been prolonged, and my life would have been much shorter if I'd been governor. I would have been forgotten in the country music field.
Afterwards, Roy Acuff returned to the Grand Ol Opry, but by the 60s, his type of country had fallen out of style, and his record sales took a downturn. In 1965, he was involved in an auto accident in Sparta, Tennessee, which almost took his life. He then went into semi-retirement, appearing occasionally at the Opry, doing token appearances.
Well, that changed in March of 1974 when the Opry moved from the Ryman Auditorium in downtown Nashville to the Grand Ol Opry House at Opryland. President Richard Nixon attended that night, and with Roy Acuff, he was honored for his lifetime of work at the Opry. Acuff was actually energized that evening and even planned to show the President of the United States how to use a yo-yo. Now, folks, believe it. Go Google it. You'll see. And I'll tell you, Roy Acuff does a better job at a yo-yo than Richard Nixon could. That's all I can say about the whole thing. But after the death of his wife, Roy Acuff moved to a house on the Opryland grounds and made regular appearances on the Opry, as well as doing odd jobs, like filling the drink machines with pop bottles in his free time.
Now, Roy Acuff received several honors: the 1988 Golden Plate Award of the American Academy of Achievement, the 1991 National Medal of Arts, and the 1991 Lifetime Achievement Award by the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the first country music act to gain that honor. Roy Acuff died in Nashville on December 23, 1992, at the age of 89.
You know, Steve, I have a couple of old Grand Ol Opry, if you want to call them yearbooks. They're programs, actually, is what they are, from the Ryman and then also from the new place when they moved to the Grand Ol Opry House. And, you know, Roy Acuff is front and center in a lot of those pages because of his contribution and what he did. And, you know, I've got something else for you. I bet you didn't know this. He was on stage the night that a Tennessee governor played piano and wowed the audience. You know who that was?
That was Lamar Alexander.
You are correct. And he also had some connections as well with President George Bush, H.W. Bush. But, you know, I guess I'll never get over his call when it was time, coming out on stage when he called for Sarah Cannon, otherwise known as Cousin Minnie Pearl. And also, he made a short appearance in Coal Miner's Daughter with Sissy Spacek. He's backstage with Minnie Pearl, and they're standing there as Sissy Spacek goes on stage for her first Opry performance that night.
It's true. And is there not a famous statue made of Minnie Pearl and Roy Acuff sitting on a bench?
Yes.
Down in, is it in Opryland?
I think it is, yeah. I didn't get a chance to see it the weekend that I went down to Nashville, but, you know, there's a lot of great contributions of artwork, and that's one of them, from what I hear, is that one of Minnie Pearl and Roy Acuff.
And, folks, that's the story of the time a country music legend ran for governor of the great state of Tennessee. Another bit of the history of this place we call home, Appalachia. Thanks for watching. Now, be sure to subscribe to the audio version of the Stories podcast. We've got a lot more stories on there than we actually do here on the YouTube channel at this point. So get on over there and listen to those stories. And you can do that by subscribing at Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Stitcher, Spreaker, Audible, Odyssey, Good Pods, or wherever fine podcasts are found. Till next we meet, y'all take care. So long, everybody.
So long.